Talking today about integrating astrological wisdom. Astrology is not something up there, it's something in here. Good luck trying to rise above your chart. It just doesn't happen that way. And as a student of astrology, you should be trying to elevate those energies, not defeat them. So check this out. So, it's Sam, and I'm here about a mile from my house in beautiful La Jolla, California. You can see behind me, it's quite bright, the sun, but it's this beautiful view. And I'm talking about how to really understand your spiritual nature in astrology and what's actually being shown with all the astrological factors. You know, I've been making some videos about karma and how to understand literally like the law of karma, which is certainly important. But that's more sort of clinical, as karma is it's a spiritual law of the universe. But what is often lacking with people's astrological understanding is how's it actually working? And you'll hear skeptics ask this of astrology a lot, Western and Vedic astrology. Well, what's really happening? Do the planets like emit rays, or is it gravity and all of this? And none of that's really the case. The thing that we fail to understand many times is that there is no separation between you, this separate individual walking around, and the cosmos, the universe. And what is the most important thing in learning astrology is to reconnect with astrology inside of you. As I've said many times, and I actually used to say it a lot more, but I'll say it here, astrology is not something up there, it's something in here. And until you know this and you feel it, and you feel the planetary energies and the signs and the houses as something in you rather than something lording over you from above, then there's going to be a disconnect, and that is the disconnect. So you want to also just understand this, that the disconnect you feel, and the reason there's confusion is because there's a belief in something, you believe it, you believe in the cosmos, you believe what I'm saying. When I say this, you believe it. You're like, yep, you know what, he's right. But you don't feel it. You don't feel those energies alive in you. You feel like, and this is often I guess I would say the fault of many astrologers and teachers, is they don't connect astrology with the living forces inside of you. And the main living forces inside of us is our feelings and our emotions. We're mainly living through the agency of our emotions and our feelings. That's the connection that we want to have. This is why most of the indications, especially that have to do with the benefic and the malefic qualities, or the gentle and the cruel qualities of planets, actually have more to do with how they feel in us, because the ancient rishis knew that we're very feeling-centric, that we're almost exclusively motivated by how we feel, which is, of course, related to the moon. And so when there's, you know, this disconnect between, let's say, Saturn, for example, which is a heavy energy, the reason it scares you is because you don't feel in control of that energy. You feel like it's something up there lording over you. What's it gonna do to me? Instead of realizing that you've been dealing with Saturn energy your whole life. You are an emanation of Saturn energy. You wouldn't be anything in this life, in this world, without Saturn and Mars and Venus. And so the thing to understand is to not fear these energies just in some abstract way, but to understand not only should you not fear them, but you are them. And you your most immediate connection to them is that feeling that bubbles up in your consciousness when there's an aspect or just a certain part of your life, and then that planet comes in and becomes at the forefront of your thoughts. And so one of the, a great exercise is to try to notice all the time, like every day or throughout the day, try to notice which energy is rising in you, which planetary energy is in your consciousness at any given time. Like, let's say right now, you have the feeling of the Mercury energy because you're listening to me talk. Maybe even the Venus energy because you see this beautiful landscape behind me. And that feeling is rising in you. But let's say the next minute, your little brother starts, screaming and making noise. Then notice what energy you feel. Then you might feel the energy of Mars, which is frustration, irritation, aggravation, because Mars steps in when there's something that's maybe outside of our realm of control and we want to stop it. We want to destroy it. Because, again, Mars is the energy that we put forth to change things that aren't right, that aren't working. And it gives us that enthusiasm and that courage to face challenges. But first it arrives in the form of some feeling. And so again, what you want to understand is that the way karma unfolds, like let's say someone's karma with Mars, it's going to first unfold, or it's going to first arrive as a feeling. You might experience that situation as, some external maybe threat or challenge or something, and then it arrives as some feeling to either spring into action, or the fear and the lack of confidence and courage to spring into action. Both of those things are going to create a feeling in you. They're going to arrive in the form of a feeling. And again, in many ways, this is what your karma is. You first experience your karma as some idea or feeling and habit, samskara. The samskaras are literally like the deep grooves and habits in your mind that have been going for lifetimes. And so the planets themselves represent these deep grooves and habits in you. And then when you face that situation, there's a habitual response that has accumulated for lifetimes. So it's not so easy to, rise above the planets, as people often say when they're trying to, talk about how we can, quote, overcome our karma and all that. There's nothing to overcome. Karma is simply the actions that you're going to take. And you can take any action. But when you're doing that, you're not rising above your chart. You're simply bringing consciousness and awareness into the process. But it's going to come in the form of a feeling. You're going to feel this, and you'll start to then notice how astrology and all of these energies, it's not something up there doing stuff to you. It's something in here. It's in here. It's in your consciousness and in your awareness, and therefore within your control. And in fact, only in your control, and your existence itself is to teach you to be 100% responsible for yourself. And it teaches you that you and only you, and I mean the real you, is responsible for everything that's happened. So again, the thing to understand, this spiritual implication of astrology and how it resonates with the spirit, and how karma filters down from the past lives and the etheric realm into your actual experience and puts you in a situation to respond, is that it arrives as these feelings and these thoughts and these compulsions and these habits. That's why you're here. Literally, that's why you've incarnated with this feeling of separateness. So we can really understand our spiritual evolution on Earth literally as the process of evolving each of the planets in us and through us and as us. So you should deeply ponder this idea even before you start learning a bunch of other things and you know, a lot of other methods and techniques. These are the things that are so overlooked, and this is why, like in my courses, particularly like in my certification course and whatnot, I always start with these ideas where we first need to get absolutely clear about who we really are first, that we're not just these separate organisms, that we're this fully illumined consciousness. And how astrology fits into that is they are the divine energies within that matrix. And so the highest culmination of everything you're trying to do through your mind-body structure is shown by the full expression of each one of these planets. The purest expression of Venus is what is the culmination of your experiences on Earth. The highest quality of Jupiter is literally the culmination of what's possible for you on Earth, and it's going to arrive in the form of these feelings and these compulsions, but it's not some predestined that you're going to act a certain way because you're like a programmed animal. That's simply not the case. And again, because people misunderstand what karma really is and treat it as if it's all the bad stuff that we're trying to fix, rather than this cycle of actions creating the future, coming back to create the new future, or coming back to create the current present. Instead of seeing it as this cycle where predeterminism is part of it, certain arrow, you know, once you shoot the arrow, it's going to land where it's going to land. But once it lands there, it's a whole new moment where you have to shoot an entirely different arrow. So this is the famous example that is used in yoga about karma, and the archer who has a quiver of arrows, which is the karmas that haven't arrived yet. Then he has an arrow in his bow, which is the moment where he's about to shoot it, so he's aiming at the target. And then there's the arrow that he's just shot that's in flight, which is the karmas that have not landed yet, that we haven't dealt with. And so this is a beautiful example of what karma is, and to be present and realize that you're always the archer with the arrow in the bow. And you have to aim that bow at something. You have to aim it, and then once you aim it, you let it fly. Once you do something, again, this is why the karmas refer to action, then you've let that arrow fly and you can't pull it back anymore. And so what we're doing with astrology, the specifics of it, is evaluating which karmas are ripe at a given moment and which emotions and feelings and samskaras and habits are being activated. And realize that it's not something up there, it's not some rock or some monster or some god like looming over you, like you're a puppet on a string. That's not what it is. It's the living forces inside of you. And these forces of intelligence, awareness, love, consciousness, beauty, power, courage, the highest things you could ever imagine, they come from the planets. And so these ideas that we can rise above our chart and all of that are confusing, and they're kind of pointless once we start studying astrology. If people don't want to study astrology and they think it's kind of silly, then you could maybe say, oh, don't worry about astrology because you can rise above your chart. That's fine. That's fine for those people. Because everybody doesn't need it. If you don't want to bother with it, then don't bother with it. But if you're going to actually study it, and you're going to actually try to understand it as a spiritual practice and discipline, I think this whole idea that you could rise above the chart and rise above the karma this misses the mark of both what the chart is, what the planets are, what karma is. You're not going to rise above it. You are it. So again, any difficulty that someone might be experiencing, again, which first arrives as some kind of limited emotion and an attachment to this idea, let's say with like Mars, that the point of our frustration and irritability and anger is to try to keep winning battles with other people. That misunderstanding of the divine quality of Mars is the problem, not Mars, and you're not going to rise above it. What you're going to do instead, you might rise above your anger, but rising above your anger means that you're going to call in the highest quality of Mars, and you transform and evolve anger into discipline and courage. And it's the discipline and courage to face your own fears and stress and worry and frustration and evolve that. So you're not rising above the chart, you're not rising above Mars, you're actually stepping into its full power. You're not rising above Saturn. The greatness of your whole being, to be committed to something and not run away just because it's difficult, that divine power comes from Saturn. That's where you get it. It's just we don't always get it, and usually we don't get it until we have to face some hardship. So again, you can thank Saturn for bringing hardship so that you can be tested and prove how much tenacity and commitment you have. Because without the tests of Saturn pressuring you, usually you won't do it. So then the trick becomes to not wait until something has become destroyed before we actually step into its highest expression. And the way we do this is literally through spiritual practices, particularly things like yoga. I say things like yoga, there's really not much else like yoga. Yoga is a whole bunch of practices. It's not just asanas, it's breathing exercises and meditation and using the physical body to unlock the chakras and open up the energy centers. Doing that balances all of the imbalances in you. Without doing that, you can study astrology for your whole life, and you can turn it into some intellectual exercise, and you'll probably make that much progress. Because then it's just this intellectual exercise, usually revolving around your ego, where you're trying to use astrology as one more way, again, to maybe defeat your bad karma or something else like that. But again, when you stop looking at it that way and you realize that it's all of the wisdom and benevolence in you, then you can relax. You learn how to fight the good fight. You learn how to really face your fears, which is the fear of death, and have the real courage to face that. And again, once you start doing a spiritual practice, especially every day, which is called sadhana, and by the way, that's the highest quality of Saturn and Mars together. The highest quality of Saturn is commitment, focus, not giving up, being determined. The highest quality of Mars is having the courage to destroy what's making us weak. So you bring those two things together and you get spiritual sadhana, where Saturn focuses the energy of Mars, not just to destroy what's making us weak now and today in the form of some like argument or some battle that's not worth winning, but to focus that energy of Mars into something that is truly worthy, which is destroying the ignorance in our soul, fighting the good fight, the real fight, which is the fight with our own ignorance. So again, this is why Mars is exalted in Saturn's sign, for example. And again, so even these two difficult, quote, bad planets, malefics, they hold the key, in many ways, one of the main keys, for your spiritual salvation. So you're never going to like rise above it because you're having a problem with Saturn. It's your opportunity to evolve that and step into its glory, not try to rise above it and defeat it. So spiritual practices. That's the way that's how those things evolve. Through your meditation, yoga, breathing exercises and awareness. Isn't this a beautiful view? I know it's not in focus because I was focused on the short range, but this is my beautiful home right near my house. Isn't that amazing? La Jolla, California. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this.